Section 16 of the Green Forest Fairy Book. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sandra Knight, www.sandraknight.net. The Green Forest Fairy Book by Loretta Ellen Brady. Sweep and Little Sweep. Chapter 3. Poor Sweep! Now that his Little Sweep had treated him so cruelly, he became the saddest man that one could ever know. For days and days he did nothing but would sit with his head in his hands, staring at the wall, thinking only of his Little Sweep. Nothing could arouse him, until at last Master Jasper stepped across the way and scolded him roundly. "Now, Sweep, this will not do," cried Master Jasper. "The bread and cakes and pies will burn in the ovens all over the land if the chimneys be not neatly swept down. Then how the housewives will scold, to be sure! Likewise will the merchants say that Sweep is become a lazy fellow, who sits idling all day long." Master Jasper, it will be seen, was a sensible youth, as well as amiable and agreeable. So once again Sweep set out with his smart little donkey cart all filled with brooms and brushes. He found many a housewife angry because he had delayed her spring house cleaning. But when these angry housewives looked at Sweep's black face, so sad and sorrowful, they had not the heart to upbraid him now. Strange to say, though Sweep was thus so dull and disconsolate, his trade of sweeping down tall chimneys thrived as it never had thrived before. He swept tall chimneys in the north of the kingdom, and in the south also. Likewise he could often be seen driving his smart little donkey cart to the east or to the west to sweep tall chimneys there. The fame of Sweep's skill began to grow. He swept the chimneys in the halls of dukes and earls. Indeed, the king and queen commanded Sweep to bring his brooms and brushes and set to work about the palace. Their Majesties, it seemed, had been greatly troubled because the royal kitchen chimney sent the smoke down instead of up, and made the royal cooks and maidens sneeze and sputter all day long. So skillfully did Sweep deal with this stubborn chimney that ever after it sent the smoke sky high, as proper chimneys should. The royal cooks and maidens sneezed and sputtered no more, and their royal Majesties were grateful as could be. The king, with his own hands, pinned a royal decoration on Sweep's sooty sleeve. But if I am to tell the truth, I must tell too that from much soot and grime and dust this royal decoration soon became as black as Sweep's own sooty sleeve, and could not be seen unless one looked quite closely. Now that his trade was thriving thus excellently, and he had no longer need to buy bread and buns for Little Sweep, Sweep's pennies grew to golden dollars very rapidly. The golden dollars in their turn soon filled the second stocking full, and even filled a third before Sweep was well aware of it. But even so, he took no pleasure in his wealth. He sighed instead because he had no longer Little Sweep to share it with him. Then, lest he become a miser hoarding gold and spending it not, Sweep at last bethought him of a kindly plan. Throughout the kingdom there were thousands and thousands of other little crossing sweepers, 2 or 3 at every corner, waiting for a penny. These wretches, Sweep knew well, were just as poor and miserable as his own Little Sweep had been in days gone by. According to his kindly plan, Sweep now began to change his store of golden dollars back to pennies once again. Then, when he met a little crossing sweeper standing broom in hand, Sweep would fling a handful of pennies to the little creature. Sometimes he filled his donkey cart with bread and buns and bright red apples to feed these little crossing sweepers, in memory of his own lost Little Sweep. Until at last, from these good practices, Sweep became known as the friend of all crossing sweepers, and was greatly loved throughout the land. So 7 years passed by. Meanwhile Sweep and Master Jasper continued friends. Sometimes Sweep stayed to supper in Master Jasper's comfortable kitchen. Other times Sweep would bid Master Jasper step across and smoke a pipe or two with him. Then, one evening just at dusk, Sweep returned from his labors and found young Master Jasper packed and ready for a journey. "Where are you off?" asked Sweep, and pointed to a musket flung beside a knapsack. "Have you not heard the news?" cried Master Jasper eagerly. "A whole year since a savage tribe invaded Yelvaland and carried off as prisoner the young and lovely Empress Yelva. Now as this lovely Empress has neither father nor husband nor brothers to protect her, and her people cry for aid, all youths who long for noble adventure are urged to fight beneath her banners. Come join me, Sweep." But Sweep shook his head. "It is not suitable that I should fight for Empress Yelva," he replied. "My black face fits me for naught but my trade of sweeping down tall chimneys." "But you are wrong, Sweep," argued Master Jasper. "A black face in battle is no great matter. Stout hearts and strong arms are sorely needed. Come, and we shall march and fight together as brothers." Again Sweep shook his head. "Indeed, good Master Jasper," answered he, "I wish with all my heart that I might fight with thee against this savage tribe, and aid the lovely Empress Yelva. But alas! who save thee would care to march and fight beside a black-faced Sweep?" "1,000 would, 2,000 would, nay, 10,000 would be glad to march with thee, Sweep!" exclaimed a shrill small voice beside them. On peering down, Sweep beheld a tiny redcap perched upon the poker. It was the same that had befriended him so long ago. "Ah, Sweep," continued Redcap briskly, "I took a fancy to you when we first met 7 years ago, and had a notion then that I would like to know you better. However, since in all these years you have not wished a wish of me, I could not have the joy of your acquaintance. We Redcaps," he explained, "although we be such powerful folk, cannot appear to mortals without they wish for us, you know." "I had not known that," answered Sweep politely, "or I would have wished some simple thing just for the pleasure of a chat with thee. But tell me, how is it that you thus appear before me now?" "Have you so soon forgot your wish?" asked Redcap. "Did I not hear you wish a moment since to fight beneath the banners of the Empress Yelva? It is to grant that wish that I now come. And mark, since in 7 years you have wished no wish of me, my magic now has grown to power tremendous. Behold thine army." Sweep heard the measured tramp of many feet, and looking through the gathering gloom beheld a line of forms that marched by, 4 and 4, and all were singing gaily as they went. At first Sweep could not tell what manner of soldiers these might be, but presently his eyes became accustomed to the dusk, and he perceived that this vast army was composed of crossing sweepers, armed with brooms instead of muskets. Perched atop of every broomstick he could see a tiny creature similar in looks and dress to the Redcap, perched upon the poker. "My brothers and my cousins, and likewise all my friends and uncles, have come to help thee too, Sweep," said Redcap. "And thou, good Master Jasper, throw aside thy musket, for in Sweep's army muskets and such like will be useless things." Good Master Jasper quickly did as Redcap had commanded, and followed after Sweep. Sweep shouldered his long brush and marched proudly at the head of his strange army. And thus began the journey into Yelvaland. Now of that journey there is not much to tell. To be sure, whenever it was time for breakfast, dinner, or supper, the Redcaps clapped their hands and there appeared 1,000 tables spread with all good fare. When night fell or when storms arose, the Redcaps likewise caused a city of 10,000 tents to spring up on the plains. The crossing sweepers enjoyed the whole march as a holiday. In all their wretched lives before, they had not had such good things to eat. Their hollow cheeks grew plump and rosy with the winds and sun, and Sweep's heart rejoiced to see the happy changes that came upon his friends. At night, when they sat grouped about their campfires, the crossing sweepers sang songs loud in praise of Sweep, whom they declared had always been their friend, and who now was the cause of their pleasant holiday. Now while Sweep and his strange army were marching thus toward Yelvaland, the people there were plunged in deep despair. The savage troops had given their soldiers so many drubbings and such bitter punishments in battle that they had quite lost heart. Judge then of their great joy when they beheld a friendly force marching to their aid. But as this horde drew near, and they perceived what manner of army it really was, their hearts sank again. "Alas," sighed these discouraged folk of Yelvaland, "of what avail against the savage troops will be this ragged rabble that approaches?" But when Sweep's army entered into Yelvaland and began to lay about them with their broomsticks, that was another story. Aided by the magic power of the Red Caps, each broomstick fell with the force of 50 giant fists and resounded loud as thunder on the mountain tops. The savage troops stood their ground but a short time, and then fled in terror before these strange and powerful weapons, which they had never seen before. Savages do not sweep their houses, you know, and so they knew nothing of the useful broomstick. Sweep, gallantly leading his vast army, pursued the flying savages and gave them battle all the while. So dexterously and well did the little crossing sweepers wield their brooms that on the third night, when both armies had agreed to rest, these savage troops rose up and stole off. Over the hills and far away they fled and never again were heard or seen from that day to this. The glorious part of Sweep's great victory was that he had not lost a single follower in battle. "And now to free the young and lovely Empress Yelva," said Sweep to Red Cap, "and then our work is done." "In all good time that too will be accomplished," answered Red Cap. "The Empress Yelva lies hidden deep down in a well of her own tears. This well lies close beside the gates of Yelvaland, and so you had best face your army right about and march there." Then once again the crossing sweepers shouldered their brooms and marched gaily off to Yelvaland. They reached the gates of the kingdom just as the moon was sinking slowly in the sky, and Sweep gave orders that they wait until the dawn to enter. "Come with me, Sweep," whispered Red Cap. "The time has come to seek the Empress Yelva, and led him to a well within a grove of trees. Now, Sweep, attend me closely," warned Red Cap, "for if you do not as I say, all will be lost. When the moon's last ray will light the waters of this well, plunge down into its depths and bring the Empress Yelva up with you. Lose not a second's time, for if the moonbeam leave the well before you, the lovely Empress Yelva must forever remain prisoner, and yourself likewise. Do you think that you are nimble enough to try?" "I know not of my nimbleness, but I will try," said Sweep, and plunged down headlong as a pale moonbeam shone down and silvered the dark waters. Before the winking of an eye, it seemed, he rose again, clasping the Empress Yelva by the hand. The moonbeam tarried long enough for Sweep to see the lovely maiden he had rescued. Her eyes, like two blue violets, shone with kindliness. Her golden hair fell rippling like a cloak about her, and when she spoke her voice was like the chime of silver bells. "Ah, sir!" exclaimed the lovely Empress Yelva, "although from your poor dress I know that you are naught but a humble Sweep, I honor you for your brave deed, and I shall wed you." At this poor Sweep was covered with confusion. He had not dreamed the lovely Empress Yelva would so much as deign to thank him. Had not the haughty Princess Cendre scorned him? But even so, his heart still longed for his first love, and knowing nothing better to do, the honest fellow told his sad tale to the Empress as they stood beside the well. She listened closely all the while. "You have a noble heart, good Sweep," said she when he had done, "and though you do not choose to wed me, I bear you no malice, but instead shall help you win your little Sweep, who has become the Princess Cendre." "Alas, your worship," said Sweep sadly, "that can never be. The Princess Cendre would scorn my black face, no matter what my fame or fortune." "Why, as to that, Sweep," cried Red Cap, "have no more concern. The Empress Yelva's tears, it would seem, are magic, for since you have plunged down the well, your face has become clean and white, as though 'twere scrubbed a dozen times. You are now a handsome fellow." "And when I have rewarded you suitably, the Princess Cendre will be more than glad to wed you, rest assured, good Sweep," said Empress Yelva. "But now the dawn is here, so let us hasten that I may see my people in my own dear Yelvaland once more." You may imagine that there was wild rejoicing when Sweep and his vast, strange army knocked upon the gates of the kingdom and demanded that they open wide for Empress Yelva. A holiday that lasted 7 days was set, and there were games and sports and pleasures. The people sang and danced upon the highways, and oxen were roasted whole upon great bonfires. Sweep and all the crossing sweepers were praised and honored throughout the length and breadth of Yelvaland, and all was merry as could be. When this great holiday passed, as holidays all do, the business of the court began again. The Empress Yelva ordered that a cottage and a piece of ground, as well as 2 bags filled with gold, be given to each crossing sweeper in reward for their brave deeds. The crossing sweepers were so delighted with their gifts that they never again returned to their own land, but dwelled in Yelvaland for all their days. The Red Caps likewise were so pleased with lovely Empress Yelva, and so admired her kind heart and sense of gratitude, that they decided from that day to make their home among the forests of her realm. "And now, Sweep," said the Empress Yelva, when all this was done, "I have not forgot the promise I made thee." Accordingly she made him prince. His title was Prince Sweepmore, and his domain of Sweepmost was twice as great and twice as rich as was the domain of haughty Princess Cendre. Sweep now was dressed in crimson velvet. The Empress Yelva from her treasure store gave him a golden sword, all set with rubies that flashed forth flame and fire in the sun. 100 horses laden all with bags of gold and pearls were also given him, as well as a like number of servants to attend him. Then once again Sweep set forth to marry Princess Cendre. "I grieve to see thee go, good Sweep," sighed Empress Yelva as they parted, "but even so I do admire thy faithful heart that bids thee go." "And I likewise do grieve to go, and I thank thee for thy gifts," Sweep answered. He bade young Master Jasper farewell too. Young Master Jasper had fallen deep in love with a noble maiden of the Empress Yelva's court, and was about to marry her. A royal messenger had been sent before to tell these tidings to the Princess Cendre. Now, strange to say, though the haughty princess was thus beautiful and wealthy, she was still unwed. To be sure, many princes of small fortunes had sought her hand, but of these the haughty creature would have none. However, her selfish ways had not pleased princes whom she had desired to please, and so it was she sat alone within her splendid castle by the sea. You may be sure that she rejoiced when she learned that Sweep was now a prince, with land and riches in good store. "Ah!" she exclaimed, "his face is clean and shining too, I hear, which is excellent. I could not tolerate him otherwise, but as it is, I shall delight to wed him." And so the haughty princess sent for milliners and jewelers, and for bookmakers and dressmakers too. She bought such silken hose and high-heeled shoes as must have cost a fortune, and had her wedding dress sewn thick with diamonds. When word was brought that the new prince was come, she donned this sparkling robe and received him with great courtesy. "Ah, Sweep," cried she, "although I know full well that Empress Yelva hath given thee a fine new title, I love to call thee by the dear old name I used to know. Tell me of thy life since last we parted. I have heard the Empress Yelva desired to marry thee herself. The forward creature! I blush for her that she should be so bold. She must be very plain of face indeed if she must go a-seeking for a husband." To these sharp words Sweep made reply. Indeed, the Empress Yelva is so fair of face that neither tongue nor pen can well describe her beauty. Moreover, she is so kind of heart and gentle of manner that though she were as plain, I still would think her lovely. "Indeed!" returned the haughty Princess Cendre, and gazed with satisfaction in her mirror. "However, it is not to chat about this forward creature that you have come hither. It is to wed me. Come, my bishops are in readiness, my guests are waiting." Now, when Sweep at last beheld this haughty princess after 7 years of longing, he found a curious change had come upon him. He became aware that he no longer loved her, and that her haughty manner and her spiteful speech distressed him. At last he saw her as she really was, an ungrateful, cold-hearted creature who thought of no one but herself. Although Sweep knew it not, the waters of the well had wrought this change in him. You may be sure that Red Cap was aware of it. So though his heart was grieved to give another pain, Sweep determined to speak his mind quite plainly. "Ah, Princess Cendre," said he, "I fear me you must tell your guests that you have changed your mind and bid your bishops go. For since my black face has been changed as though by magic, it would seem my heart and mind by magic were changed too. I know now that thou art too cold and proud to be my princess. A princess should delight to make folk happy, and that I fear me you would never do." The Princess Cendre was enraged at this talk. We well know that she had a dreadful temper when it was aroused, and she chose to rouse it now. She stormed and she scolded, she threatened Sweep, and she denounced him, but she could not move his resolution. "You have come hither to wed me. This is my wedding day, and you shall not ride away," cried she. "Nay, but I will," returned Sweep. "Once before I came hither to wed thee on thy wedding day, and once before I rode away. And so farewell." Away rode Sweep with all his train, and stopped nor stayed until he reached the gates of Yelvaland. A herald told the news of his approach, and Empress Yelva with her noble lords and ladies went forth to welcome him. Sweep fell upon his knee and humbly begged the lovely maiden's hand in marriage, and Empress Yelva smilingly consented. "Indeed, dear Sweep," declared the Empress Yelva, "I had a notion all the while that you would soon return, and had our wedding feast prepared." Now could it have been that the Red Caps whispered of the magic change the well of her own tears had caused? Then straightway Sweep and Empress Yelva were married. Young Master Jasper and the noble maiden were married too. It was a double wedding. Another feast was held, so bounteous and so magnificent that all previous feasts seemed poor and mean by comparison. Sports and games were set, and prizes of great value were awarded. Each nobleman received a bag of diamonds as a gift, each noble lady a rope of pearls. The common people, one and all, were given each a bag of golden coins that they too might make merry. The lords and dukes danced on the highways with the dairymaids. The Empress Yelva and her ladies trod minuets with shepherds' lads and farmers' boys, and all was merry as a marriage feast should be. Sweep now was emperor. He wore a robe of purple bordered deep with ermine, and held a scepter clustered thick with diamonds when he sat at court. With Empress Yelva by his side, he now rode forth in a splendid chariot of gold and royal enamels. But though he was raised to high rank and great wealth, Sweep was as amiable and as kind of heart as he had been when he swept down tall chimneys for his living and drove his donkey cart all filled with brooms and brushes. To tell the truth, however, Sweep had little opportunity to do kind deeds. There were no poor folk to be found in Yelvaland. The Empress Yelva governed her realm too well and wisely for that. Now it happened on one winter's day, when all the ground was white, Sweep noticed that the frost hung thick and glistened on the branches of the firs and cedars. "It seems to me, my dear," said Sweep to Empress Yelva, "that it would be most suitable if we should build some houses for our little friends, the Red Caps, who are dwelling in our forest. I fear me that they suffer greatly from the cold." The Empress Yelva thought this plan most excellent, and soon the royal carpenters and joiners were set to making tiny little houses. When these were made, the royal painters colored them bright green with bright red roofs, which was quite like the costume of the Red Caps, if you will remark. The Empress Yelva and her noble lords and ladies then hung these tiny houses in the branches of the firs and cedars, and they looked like so many brightly colored bird houses. When the Red Caps flew home that night, they were delighted. They guessed at once for whom these tiny houses were meant. They praised Sweep and complimented him on his kind heart and thoughtful ways. "We Red Caps do many kind things for mortals," they remarked most sagely to each other, "but it is seldom mortals ever think to do kind things for us. It is quite fitting that Sweep should be emperor. He hath a noble heart, as sovereigns all should have." It happened then upon another day, while still the snow lay thick upon the ground, that Princess Cendre and her servants went a-riding through the forest. The haughty princess marked the tiny brightly colored houses, and asked what they may be. A forester near by made answer thus: "Now if your royal highness please," said he, "Sweep, our good emperor, hath caused these to be made for our little friends the Red Caps. They suffered greatly with the cold, he thought." "Indeed!" exclaimed Princess Cendre. "Then your little friends the Red Caps must suffer from the cold again, I fear. I have taken a great fancy to these pretty toys, and mean to hang them in my own forest, that my goldfinches and nightingales may dwell therein in winter, instead of flying to the Southland." She then desired her servants to cut down the tiny brightly colored houses, and rode off, little thinking of the mischief she had done. That night, when the Red Caps flew home, they were agitated and buzzed about like so many angry little bees. They missed their tiny comfortable houses, and shivered with the cold. They knew, of course, who had done this. They knew all things, these Red Caps of the olden days. "Now this haughty Princess Cendre is impossible!" they declared most wrathfully. "She cares not though we freeze to death. Although we have done noble things for her, she has quite forgot them. She has been princess long enough," they cried. "Let her be Little Sweep again," and they clapped their hands in anger. Then in that instant vanished the splendid castle by the sea, and Princess Cendre's robes of satin fell from her. She found herself dressed out in sweeper's rags, and once more, broom in hand, standing on her corner. The old master, back within his comfortable kitchen again, was disposed to treat her no better than he had before, and so, for all her days, Little Sweep was forced to dwell within her cold, bare attic. But there was no kind Sweep to toss her bread and buns each day, nor buy her bright red apples or plum cake. Sweep, on the other hand, lived long and happily as emperor. He and the lovely Empress Yelva, it is said, were blessed with 20 children, all of whom inherited Sweep's noble nature and his kindly heart. End of Section 16.